For weeks, the piercing cries of a child had cut through the walls like razor blades. The building was a modest walk-up on Willow Creek Avenue, peaceful on the outside with white-painted siding and small balconies adorned with potted plants. The kind of place where you'd hear a mourning dove in the morning, the laughter of someone getting home late, or the clunky hum of an old elevator. But lately, those everyday sounds had been drowned out by something else, louder, sharper, and impossible to ignore. Every day, every night, a toddler's screams filled the air like a constant alarm that no one seemed willing to acknowledge. Some neighbors had simply tuned it out. Others just shrugged and said, "It's just a phase, kids cry. It'll pass." But for Michael Harris, this wasn't normal. This wasn't background noise you could muffle with Netflix or ignore with a podcast. It was raw and unfiltered suffering, breaking into every corner of his quiet life. He wasn't a parent, he didn't hate kids, but he knew what crossed the line. And what he was hearing from the apartment downstairs had gone far beyond that line. He tried to let it go, bought noise-canceling headphones, played white noise, even tried guided meditation. But nothing worked. The screams kept coming, morning, night, random hours in between. They jolted him awake before sunrise, cut through his Zoom meetings like sirens. They crawled into the silences of his day and gnawed at his calm like termites under the floorboards. It wasn't just noise anymore. It was a pressure, a fog of tension that never lifted. Then one Thursday morning in May, Michael made a decision. Not out of rage, but with the calm precision of someone filling out paperwork. He opened the voice recorder on his phone and hit record. 5 minutes, 10, 15, screaming, sobbing, something slamming against the floor. Then he emailed the recordings to the building's property manager with a short, polite but firm note. "Hi, I'm a tenant in Unit 3C. For several weeks now, I've been experiencing severe noise disturbances from the unit directly below me. Please find attached audio files recorded this morning. I'd appreciate it if you could look into this matter. Thank you." Click. Sent. What Michael didn't know was that this message, so ordinary, so reasonable, was about to light a match. What followed wasn't just a neighbor complaint. It was the start of something far more dangerous. A quiet war built on fear, twisted truth, and rising tension. He was about to be pulled into a nightmare he never saw coming, caught between a neighbor willing to do anything, and a system that often looks the other way instead of stepping in. Michael Harris, 36, worked from home in a bright one-bedroom apartment on the top floor. He was a data analyst for a global tech company, and his days were usually calm, just the gentle rhythm of his keyboard, the steady hum of his monitor, and the occasional meow from his tabby cat, Whiskey. Michael had chosen this building for its quiet. No loud traffic, no frat parties, no rowdy neighbors. It was peaceful until about 3 months ago when the apartment directly below his became vacant, and a new tenant moved in with a little boy whose curly hair was only matched by the sharpness of his screams. Her name was Danielle Marchand, 33 years old, a single mom, a waitress at a nearby diner, or so the neighbors whispered. She moved in quietly without introducing herself to anyone. Michael remembered seeing her for the first time. Head down, eyes avoiding contact, dragging her son behind her like a laundry bag up the stairs. He had nothing against her. In fact, he'd tried to greet her the day she moved in. Just a polite, "Hi?" She ignored him. So be it. You didn't need to be friends to coexist. But soon after, the walls began to shake. The little boy, whose name seemed to be Liam, judging by the way it was constantly screamed, cried like he was being tortured. Day and night, with no pattern or warning. Endless sobbing, things being knocked over, doors slamming. And sometimes adult voices, sharp, angry, accusing. And always those screams, echoing up through the vents like a ghost wailing from another world. 3 days after Michael sent his complaint, the building management replied. The message was cold and formulaic, basically saying the tenant had been contacted and reminded of the building's noise policy. No names, no assurances, just this line. The concerned tenant has been informed. Thank you for your patience. Michael sighed. He already knew this wouldn't change anything, but he didn't expect the backlash to come so fast. The very next day, he received a new email, again from management. But this time he wasn't the one complaining. He was the one being complained about. Danielle Marchand had filed a formal grievance, claiming that Michael walked aggressively in his apartment, dragged furniture in the middle of the night, and that his behavior was intimidating. The building manager asked him to moderate his conduct to prevent further noise disturbances. Michael stared at the screen, stunned. Intimidating? Him? He read the message again, then again. No, this wasn't a mistake. The neighbor had retaliated. That's when he realized this wasn't going to be just another closed complaint ticket. This was turning into something else, a quiet, escalating war. And like most neighbor wars, there'd be no talking things out, no mediation, just tension, petty moves, and quiet manipulation. That night, while he was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, a sudden thud made him jump. Then another thud, thud. It was coming from right below his feet, her ceiling, his floor. It was unmistakable, the sound of someone jabbing upward with a broomstick or a mop handle. She was banging on the ceiling. He hadn't done anything. He walked like he always did, quiet, careful, normal. But she had chosen her method of communication, provocation. That night, Michael didn't sleep. He just sat up in bed with the lamp on, staring at the ceiling, and silently telling himself, "All right, if I need proof for everything, then I'll have it, down to the last second." The next morning, he ordered 2 Nest Cam indoor cameras with 10-day cloud storage. He mounted them at opposite corners of his living room. From that point on, every sound, every movement, every vibration would be recorded, time-stamped, and backed up. He was no longer just a tenant. He was now his own investigator, his own witness. And if it came to that, his own lawyer. The days that followed were strangely quiet. No more crying, no more banging on the ceiling. Not even the sound of toys or furniture scraping the floor. The apartment below was silent. At first, Michael felt relieved. But then, a strange kind of tension set in. This wasn't peace. It was a strategic pause. From his kitchen window, he noticed the gray sedan Danielle always parked in front of the building was gone. She had vanished. So had the boy. For 9 straight days, the apartment below stayed completely still. No footsteps, no voices, no signs of life. Part of him hoped she had given up. Maybe she'd broken the lease. Maybe she'd moved out, run from the pressure. He even dared to dream of getting his life back. But deep down, he knew better. People like Danielle Marchand didn't just disappear quietly. They retreated, they regrouped, they planned. So Michael did the same. Some might have called it paranoid, even excessive, but he didn't care. He installed 2 more cameras, one in the bedroom, one in the hallway, all carefully placed, facing only his own spaces, never invading anyone's privacy. All connected to the cloud, all with thermal detection, sound capture, and live alerts. Each event logged and stored for 10 days. If anything happened, he'd have it on record, minute by minute. Then came Monday, May 19th at exactly 8:04 a.m. He heard her voice echoing through the stairwell, louder this time, sharper. She was back, dragging a suitcase behind her, and the boy, Liam, was screaming again, just like before, as if the nightmare had been paused and was now picking up right where it left off. But this time, something was different. She wasn't yelling at the child anymore, and not long after she returned, the banging started again. Only this time, it wasn't random. It was deliberate, repeated, aggressive. She began pounding the ceiling, not just once, but in bursts, at the most absurd hours. 2:17 p.m., 3:09 a.m., 9:46 p.m., sometimes even at dawn. Out of instinct, Michael would hit manual record on the Nest app, even though everything was already being captured. And then, in a mix of bitter irony and quiet despair, he'd start speaking directly to the camera, like a reporter documenting his own descent into madness. It's May 22nd, 3:02 p.m. As you can hear, my downstairs neighbor is banging on the ceiling. I'm standing in my kitchen making coffee. No music, no guests. And still, she's pounding. He'd state the date, the time, what he was eating, what he was doing, as if he'd someday need to defend every breath in a courtroom. And sometimes, with a voice trembling from sarcasm, he'd hold up his sandwich toward the lens and add, "For the record, I'm having an egg and sausage croissant from Dunkin'. No criminal activity at this time, but you never know." and with each blow from below, Danielle was giving him another piece of evidence. Then came May 25th, around 10:30 p.m. That's when the situation escalated again. She started pounding in measured intervals, 6 knocks, then a pause, 8 more, another pause, then again. Michael sat frozen in his living room, heart racing, sweat forming on his forehead. He wasn't living anymore, he was enduring. And while others might have heard nothing more than an annoyed neighbor, he felt the full weight of targeted harassment. He stood up, grabbed his phone, and called the non-emergency line of the local police. He explained everything: the history, the pattern, the recordings, the complaint to management, the retaliation, the persistent, documented noise. They told him to wait. So he waited. 45 minutes, standing in the hallway, fully dressed, motionless like a soldier at his post. Finally, 2 officers showed up. He let them in, showed them the footage, pointed at the ceiling like a man pointing at a quiet war zone no one else could see. The officers went downstairs and knocked on Danielle's door. No answer, no footsteps, no voice. But she was there, they knew it. Michael could feel it. She was always there, listening, watching, but she refused to open. One of the officers sighed, jotted something in his notepad, and told Michael the incident would be logged. An incident number. That's all it was. He didn't know if it would mean anything, but it was one more piece in the puzzle. One more brick in the wall of proof he was quietly building. He had promised himself he'd go pick up the physical report at the precinct the following Tuesday. Monday was a public holiday, so the admin offices would be closed. But what he didn't know was that come morning, he wouldn't be the one knocking on a door. It would be the police. And this time, they weren't there to bring him justice. They were there to ask him questions. On the morning of May 26th, Michael woke up with a strange feeling in his gut. It wasn't exhaustion, even though he'd barely slept 2 hours. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was something else. A cold, creeping sense of foreboding. The kind of silence that felt too heavy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. He tried to shake it off. He had a plan. A clear one. Pick up the incident report from the precinct. Add it to the folder. Send everything, audio, video, timestamps, to building management. And if they still didn't act, he'd let his lawyer handle it from there. Everything was ready. He had even printed out a detailed timeline. Dates, screenshots, recordings, exact durations of noise, annotated with time codes. At 3:12 p.m., while folding laundry in the living room, there was a knock at the door. 3 sharp knocks. Then silence. He figured it was a delivery, maybe a neighbor. He didn't move. Then the knocking came again, louder, more insistent. And then a voice, firm and neutral. Municipal police. Mr. Harris, please open the door. His blood ran cold. This wasn't a follow-up from the incident the night before. He hadn't requested anything. No callback, no visit was scheduled. But here they were, at his door. He glanced at his phone. No missed calls, no emails, nothing. He inhaled slowly and opened the door. 2 officers stood in the hallway. Serious, professional, calm, but heavy with purpose. Good afternoon, sir. We were called regarding an ongoing issue with your downstairs neighbor, Miss Marchand. Michael blinked. From last night? I already have an incident number. I was actually on my way to... No, one of the officers cut in. This is a separate matter. She just called 5 minutes ago. She's accusing you of threatening behavior. Today. A cold shiver ran down Michael's spine. Today? I haven't even left my apartment. I've never spoken to that woman, not once. Not a word since she moved in. The officers exchanged a quick glance. Then one of them adjusted his tone. More direct now. She's accusing you of making threats from your balcony. She claims you were intoxicated. She says you verbally assaulted her in front of her son. And most importantly, he paused. She claims there was a past relationship between you two, which under county law would classify this as a domestic dispute. The word hit like a brick. Relationship. Michael felt the trap close around him. She was trying to reframe everything, turn a neighbor conflict into a domestic incident. And in this state, that meant mandatory detainment for 24 hours even with no solid evidence. It was brutal, legal, and calculated. But he didn't even need to argue. He simply looked up and pointed toward the corner of the room, where a small camera blinked silently from the wall. Want to see what I was doing 5 minutes ago? I can show you. 2 angles, 2 files, time-stamped. The wall clock is visible. He stepped back calmly. Didn't invite them in, just offered the view from the door. He pulled up the Nest app. There on the screen was Michael, just minutes earlier. Sitting on the couch in gym shorts, petting his cat, whiskey, then folding a blanket, then walking to the kitchen for a glass of water. No alcohol, no balcony, no shouting, no contact, no threat. The officers nodded slowly. One of them whispered something under his breath. The other scribbled a few notes into his notepad. We'll file the report. No further action for now, but please be careful, sir. These kinds of situations can escalate fast. Michael closed the door gently, then stood there. Still, frozen in the center of his living room. This wasn't a noise complaint anymore. It wasn't even harassment. It was a calculated setup. Cold, deliberate, methodical. She had tried to have him arrested for domestic abuse with a man she had never even spoken to. That night, he didn't eat. He didn't sleep. Instead, he copied every video file onto multiple external drives. Created a brand new Google Drive folder tree. He shared full access with his lawyer, with his sister, and with an ex-girlfriend he still trusted. Then he left each of them a voice message. If I disappear, if I get taken in and you don't hear from me, this folder has everything. Dates, footage, the full story. Promise me, you'll take it public. Blow the whole thing wide open. At that exact moment, Michael realized this wasn't just neighbor harassment anymore. He was the target of a calculated lie, dangerous and potentially deadly. The days that followed blurred into a gray, shapeless fog. Michael lived inside his apartment like someone sheltering in a bunker under siege. Every sound had meaning. Every vibration on the floor sent a jolt of adrenaline through his chest. He no longer played music. He didn't speak on the phone out loud. He even shortened his showers, afraid the sound of running water might be misinterpreted. He was scared. Not of her, not exactly, but of what she might make up next. On Monday, she had lied to the police. What was stopping her from saying he had a gun? Or that he had threatened to shoot up the building? Or, God forbid, that he had hurt her child? County law was crystal clear. If a 911 call even hinted at an armed threat, police would dispatch with force. No questions asked. Michael knew it wouldn't take much. Just one phone call, one sentence. And a SWAT team could burst through his door in the middle of the night and throw him to the floor before he had a chance to explain. So he shut everything down. He barely left the apartment, kept the blinds half drawn. His phone stayed plugged in at all times, always ready. Each day he triple-checked his backup system, making sure the video files were uploading properly to Google Drive. He even created a new folder. He named it, If I Disappear. He shared it with 3 people he trusted most. His sister, who lived in Portland. His attorney, Julian Reynolds. And Camille, an ex-girlfriend who had always stayed kind, always believed in him. Inside the folder, he stored everything. Video files, screenshots, emails with building management, police reports. He also left a note. If I'm arrested, or worse, this file is everything. Use it to defend me or to expose her. On Tuesday, May 27th, Michael went to the police station as planned. He picked up both incident reports, including the one from the officer who'd visited after the false accusation. And for the first time, he had something concrete in his hands. An official document with her full name, Danielle Marchand. It felt like a small victory, a sliver of control in a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. He called his attorney, Julian, and gave him a full rundown of everything. Julian didn't hesitate. She's trying to force a domestic case. If she does it again, we file for false reporting. In the meantime, I'll serve her with a formal notice. And we prepare a symbolic lawsuit. If she plays with provocation, we play with the law. All the way. That evening, Michael went back to the building management office, determined to present his full case. The property manager's assistant greeted him with a stiff, automatic smile. He placed a binder of 38 pages on her desk, along with a USB stick containing video excerpts, time-stamped screenshots, copies of the police reports, and a formal letter signed by his attorney. She flipped through it, skimmed a few lines, barely looked up when she said, "You know, maybe you could just talk to her? Might be easier that way." Michael blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" "I mean, maybe we could set up a little meeting. You two and us. Just a chance to talk things out. No reason to turn this into a war, right?" He stared at her for a long moment. Then he spoke, calm, clipped, every word controlled. "I'd be more than happy to attend that meeting, but I'll be bringing my attorney. And the very first question will be simple. Why did Ms. Marchand lie to the police, saying I had a relationship with her and that I threatened her when we've never even spoken? That shouldn't be a problem if she's telling the truth, right?" Silence. The assistant cleared her throat, fidgeted with a pen. "Well, I mean, maybe we wait a bit. No need to involve a lawyer just yet." Michael closed the binder gently. "Exactly what I thought." He stood up and left without another word. That night, he didn't sleep. At 3:14 a.m. Pukiao, he was still awake, sitting in the dark of his living room, Odin curled against him. The lights were off. The camera light was on. He lived in a trapped apartment, inside a building that had become a stage for paranoia, manipulation, and institutional silence. He was alone. Yes, but he had something she didn't. The truth, captured and saved, second by second. And one promise, whispered into the darkness. "You won't erase me with lies, not this time." On Friday, May 30th, Michael mailed a letter. Not just any letter, not a note of apology, not a plea for peace. It was a formal cease and desist, signed and drafted by his attorney, sent certified mail with return receipt, addressed directly to Danielle Marchand. The letter was crystal clear. It listed the facts: the noise harassment, the false accusations, the deliberate manipulation of law enforcement. It demanded the immediate end to any form of harassment, verbal, physical, or psychological, and it warned that any further infraction would trigger a lawsuit for defamation, false reporting, and emotional damages, without warning. But that was only step one. Michael and his lawyer launched a symbolic civil lawsuit. 5 charges, $1 for each. Noise harassment, false accusation of threats. Fabricated report to law enforcement, attempted misuse of domestic law. Violation of peaceful enjoyment of property. $5. 5 truths. 5 legal fingerprints. Not for the money, for the principal. And to put her name in the court records, just like she tried to stain his in the police database. But Michael wasn't finished. He began working with a police officer specializing in false allegations. Together, they started building a criminal case, a formal complaint, a message, a line in the sand. Maybe it would help others. Maybe it would stop her from doing this to someone else, but mostly it was about truth and dignity. Meanwhile, the building stayed the same, unchanged, cold. Management had stopped replying to his emails. The neighbor from the 3rd floor avoided eye contact. The janitor, once friendly, now smiled with discomfort and disappeared fast. And the silence, it didn't just come from the ceiling anymore, it came from everywhere. Each day, Michael would get up, sip lukewarm coffee, and check his recordings. He lived under a kind of reverse surveillance, not to spy on others, but to protect himself from lies. And no matter how far he pushed back, he felt it. His freedom had already been shrinking. Not in body, but in soul. That deep ache you feel when you live in a place where one made-up sentence could take away everything. Where the system shrugs and says, maybe try talking. Maybe it'll work itself out. Where to be believed, you have to prove every second of your life. He found himself thinking more and more about leaving. Not out of weakness, but for survival. And yet, he had made himself a promise. If she leaves first, I'll stay. But if she stays, I'll go. Not because she won, but because I refuse to live in a cage, with bars made of injustice and locks made of silence. He never wanted this war. But since she had forced him to fight it, he fought it with evidence, with law, and with control. No yelling, no retaliation. Just the truth. Organized, time-stamped, ready for court. And every night as he drew the curtain shut, he'd run his hand gently down Odin's back and whisper into the darkness. It's all on tape. And if they come again, this time I'll be the one knocking on the door. And you? What would you do if your neighbor tried to have you arrested with just one lie? How far would you go to prove your innocence before it's too late?